but we're going to take a couple early looks at the upcoming pay-per-view, run down the main card, and then just a line movement that I see going on the prelims and things to keep an eye out for. As everybody knows, in the main event, we got Amanda Nunes going up against Juliana Pena in the rematch of a fight that cost people a lot of money. Amanda Nunes, being the GOAT coming into that fight, was over a minus 1,000 favorite. Nobody really saw that coming. And there's a lot of speculation going into that fight. A lot of things that were pointed out about this fight whenever it originally happened was the fact that Amanda Nunes had COVID leading into it, and that this was kind of her first jump down in weight to the 125 division in quite some time, as she was up there defending, or 135, sorry, as she was up there defending the 145 division title. We obviously know that Amanda Nunes is the rightful favorite in this. It's kind of surprising to see the line at minus 275 with the return on Juliana Pena being a plus 230. We just don't really know where Amanda Nunes is going to be at. She came in off the Ultimate Fighter, and as much as it was a competitive season and stuff like that, it seems to me at this time in her point, or at this time in her life, when she's 34 years old, you kind of have to question if she really still wants to be in there anymore. Because if Amanda Nunes shows up, she beats Juliana Pena in every single aspect of this fight. But once again, she just had a kid. She's 34 years old. She's kind of been doing this for so long that I don't know if she's going to come in here as prepared as everybody thinks she's going to. So I feel like there's a lot of narrative going into this. I don't hate anybody that takes the dog shot on Juliana Pena. It's just one of these things where, as for a money line, it's definitely a stay away. The fight doesn't go the distance. It's probably the best way to play this, as Juliana Pena does generally get finished in most of her losses. And with Amanda Nunes, she got finished in the last fight too. So if she comes in, shows any of those cardio issues or anything like that, you're going to kind of find yourself in the same scenario. Right now, if you look at the fight goes the distance line, you are sitting at, one second here, minus 300 for no. So it's a little bit of a juicy play, but it kind of covers both angles on this. It saves you from laying the chalk on Amanda Nunes, just have the same thing happen with Pena. So I'll side with Nunes in this one. I think she definitely does get this done. But as I said, there's a lot of narratives going into this, and you can't really bet on things you don't know. So fight doesn't go the distance at minus 300 is definitely the play. In the co-main event, you have the interim title fights between Brandon Moreno and KaraFrance. And I'll be the first to say, I wasn't really a big KaraFrance believer in the beginning. He definitely had some fight performances that were kind of lackluster, and just not really a guy I felt like I can get behind. In his last fight against Askar Askarov, the whole world was on Askar, and he just came out here and showed that he's a dog and that he wants to be in there and that he wants to be able to get this done and kind of cement his spot in the flyweight division. Brandon Moreno, on the other hand, is coming off that loss to Davidson Figueiredo in one of the best trilogies we've ever had. The first fight was very close. The second fight, Brandon Moreno got it done early, but there was a lot of issues with Figueiredo going into that one. And in the third fight, it was very highly competitive, but I thought Figueiredo won and thought the right man got his hand raised there. Brandon Moreno is a super scrappy fighter, comes in throwing bombs, but in the flyweight division, as you know, you don't really have the same types of KOs and or finishes. He is capable of getting the job done, but KaraFrance is super durable. If there is a finish in this fight, I definitely see it coming from the KaraFrance side, just because KaraFrance is a guy that comes in here and whenever he throws bombs, he's one of these guys that kind of has, some power in the division. And you don't see that too much in the flyweight division. If you're looking at KaraFrance by KO, it's sitting at plus 475 right now, which isn't a bad look at all if you're looking for props. Right now, Brandon Moreno by points, sitting at a plus 130 though, and that's definitely the way I would attack this fight. If you don't really know who's going to win, as I said, I highly anticipate this fight to go the distance, and a fight that, could be one that we look back at, and it's just, type of fight you want to rewatch again. Both these guys have the ability to make this a very competitive fight. And if Kai shows up like he did against Askarov, this fight's going to be a lot closer. But I just think the pace, the pressure, and everything Brandon Moreno brings to the table is just going to be what makes this his fight. Another sneaky play that you can look at, as we know this is going to be a very close fight, is Brandon Moreno by a split decision. Don't currently have a line on that right now, but whenever DraftKings drops their lines, that will definitely be something I'm going to look at, or just the fight ends in a split decision. Because if Sal is reffing this one, or is Sal's a judge on this card, we all know how these things go. On the next fight down the card, you have Derek Lewis versus Sergey Pavlovich. This is kind of an interesting fight. Sergey got signed to the UFC, and he really was inactive, and I think a lot of that was due to COVID. He really didn't fight much between. Well, I can't say it's due to COVID, but I think a fair bit of it has to have to do with that, because he had 3 canceled fights between 2020 and 2021 before he made his return in 2022 against Shamil, where he was able to get rid of him in the first round. I feel like a lot of people, at least in the betting perspective, are overlooking Sergey in the spot. I think that the thing with Derek Lewis, right, and we all know this time and time again, is that if you're looking from a betting perspective, you're always betting Derek Lewis by KO, because that's what he does. He's not a high output fighter. He's not a very good wrestler. He's not somebody that even has very good striking. He's just one of these guys that clips people and they go to sleep. This is a bigger cage. This is going to favor Sergey a little bit. He has more of the kickboxing fundamentals and the Muay Thai style fighter. And I think that he's going to be able to just utilize this and just kind of, dance around the cage. I know a lot of people are looking at this fight to end inside the distance, and I'm sure the lines are going to reflect that just the same. With fight not going the distance at minus 600 right now. So it's obscene odds. And I don't hate the stab on Sergey by decision. It's plus 600 right now. And I think if he's smart, he's going to avoid the power shots of Derek Lewis. And I don't think he's going to engage in a firefight in this fight. I see him dancing around the ring, just landing leg kicks, kind of doing not what Volkan did at UFC London, but kind of implementing like a similar style where he's not going to give in to how Derek Lewis is going to win this fight. Because he knows, like, if he gets into a firefight here, he's going to go to sleep. This line was lined up as a pick'em last time I looked at it. Right now, it's sitting with Sergey at a minus 130. I probably project this line to keep growing a little bit, but come fight night, I feel money will come back in on Lewis because he's a fan favorite. But ironically enough, he has never won in Texas. So he's fighting in his hometown again. They probably set this fight up so that he can finally get a win inside of his hometown, but we'll see how this one goes. I'm going to side with Sergey in this one. And I think Sergey either gets it done by KO or he gets it done by decision. But as I said, at plus 600, I do not hate a stab on that. It's a 3-round fight. It's a big cage. And unfortunately, if you're fighting Derek Lewis, you're probably going to want to do a lot of running. You're going to want to work with your jab, land your kicks, and get the fuck out of there, because he's going to start swinging. And if he clips you with literally anything, you're probably going to go to sleep. Moving on down on this card, we have Alexandre Pantosia going up against Alex Perez. This one's a little bit tough because we haven't seen Perez in a while, but Perez has had trouble making weight. He's had fights fall out on him. And he's kind of a killer be killed type of fighter. But if we look over this, man, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights that have been canceled in the last 2 years. He's coming off a loss in the first round to Davison Figueiredo. And it's not a fight he looked overly impressive in, He's kind of a killer be killed type of fighter. Like if he's either finishing his fighters or he's getting finished himself. And I think it's a bad fight. I think after this long layoff, I think they should have matched him up with somebody a little bit lower in the division. I don't really see a world where he wins this fight. Alexandre Pantosia, the guy's got phenomenal striking, amazing grappling. If he gets you to the ground, he can put you in positions you don't want to be in, and he could probably go for the submission just the same. We saw that happen with Brandon Royval. And he's just going to be the much better fighter on this card. This is definitely a parlay piece, definitely a spot I think you should plant your flag and, run with it. on this card, it's a pretty dicey one. Like there's a lot of fights that really can go either way. So this is one that I'm definitely more confident in. And I think Pantoja gets it done. And I think he probably gets it done inside of the distance. If you look at the lines right now, you have Pantoja that's sitting at, let's shit up here. Yeah, Pantoja right now is a minus 177. It's kind of an odd line there. But I think there's some value here. You know, the fight doesn't go the distance as a plus 100. And as I was saying earlier, like Perez, he finishes his fights or he gets finished. And I think Pantoja is really going to be able to get it done in this one. Pantoja by KO is plus 700. Pantoja by submission is plus 600. So I like both these odds on this one. This is definitely a spot that I think you can hammer. And honestly, I like the submission because I feel like Perez is going to try and get this to the ground. And I think Pantoja is going to be able to wrap him up in something. So give me Alexandre Pantoja at plus 600. Let's call it a day. Moving on down on this card. Just a sec here. We have Magomed Ankalaev going up against Anthony Smith. Now, this is a fight where I'm actually heavily confident in, and I know all the world is on Magomed. And if you look at the line, it heavily represents him, with him sitting at around a minus 500 on some books. But, like, I do not understand this line at all. I think with Magomed, he would need to wrestle. And if you look at the stats behind his wrestling, he only averages about one takedown per fight, which isn't going to be enough to get Smith out of there. He's super low volume. And with Anthony Smith throws caution to the wind. He's got good leg kicks. He's got good body kicks. Has good punches. His boxing is crisp. He's got over 40 MMA fights. So I don't understand where the line is at all in this one. I think he's gonna be able to frustrate. Magomed on the feet, and I got a weird narrative for this one, man. I think he's gonna shoot for a takedown, and yeah, he's minus 600 on Bet Online right now. That's insane, but I think Magomed's gonna get frustrated with the kicks. He's gonna shoot for a takedown, and I think Anthony Smith is gonna wrap up a submission. And right now, the submission prop is sitting at a plus 1600. So you can definitely see a sprinkle coming my way on that one. Some obscene odds for a guy that's been proven time and time again. It's just the thing with Anthony Smith is Anthony Smith kind of has mental lapse, and you know he tends to not always show up. He's talked before about how he has anxiety going into these fights and how sometimes he's just not mentally prepared for them the way he thinks he should be. So that's always something to keep in mind. But I don't recommend parlaying Magomed at minus 600. I don't like Magomed by points is sitting at a plus 125. That brings it down a little bit, but I don't see him finishing this fight. In retrospect, you know, he doesn't have that many finishes on his record. Like, he went to a decision over 5 rounds with Thiago Santos, went to a decision with Volkan, went to a decision with Krylov. So he had the KO win over Ion Kudalaba, went to a decision with Kilton Abreu. So really the only people this guy was finishing were on the regional scene. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at betting violence. You can also bet the over in this fight. The over right now is sitting at a minus 110. I think that's a good piece as well. I feel like that kind of covers both your angles because I said there's only a 3-round fight. And unless you're like me, who's going to take the plus 1600 stab on Smith, I think this fight probably goes to a decision. That kind of wraps up the main card there. We're not going to call it that. Here by Kelman, I will have a show coming out later this week where we are going to touch on the lower half of this card. There's just no props or anything available for right now. There is a couple fights that I do want to address just quickly that you should jump on. I think the Drew Dober line right now is something that's going to get blown up a little bit. I think Drew Dober is definitely one of the guys on this card that I would actually want to parlay, just because I think with Rafael Alves taking this fight on short notice. Am I looking at the right guy? Am I lying to you guys here? Yeah, with Rafael Alves taking this fight on short notice, I just think that his gasting is going to appear to be a problem, and that may be something that he runs into. So I would keep an eye out on that. Yeah, right now, if we look at the Drew Dober line, he opened up at a minus 205. He's now minus 250. They're expecting this line to close. No, so he opened a minus 300. It's a closing range is between a minus 250 and a minus 194, depending on the book you're looking at. It's definitely a line I'd get on now, though, because I can see money coming in on him as the week progresses. Another fight, I don't know if they're going to give it to me. They do. Another fight that you should jump on now is Dontel Mays. He opened up at a plus 100 against a guy that's like 3-0, completely unproven, just pretty much a bare knuckle boxer. I wish I got that plus 100 because I would have hammered it. And right now they're saying the closing range is going to be minus 165. He's sitting at around a minus 115 right now. So there's definitely a line I would get on as soon as you can, because that's another spot where I feel like you can lay the hammer on this card. And last but not least, just give me a sec here. I think you should jump on the Nikolai line as a dog. That line keeps closing. He opened up in a plus 170 dog. And whenever it comes to Ihor, man, like this guy's coming out of the Contender Series. And although he got a KO in that fight, he absorbed more punches than he took. And he didn't look good doing it. It was just wild hooks, and he's not good. Like, I'll be honest, like I tape studying this fight was kind of painful just to see what this guy does. Like, he's super easy to take down. And a lot of the fights he wins is just because his opponent gasses and he just throws wild hooks till he hits you. Nikolai Nagurmanov is not one of the UFC's best, but he's been in there with tough guys. And he's very much able to control this fight, I think. He's been able to get him down. And I feel like, honestly, just the gas tank alone is what's going to cause Ihor problems. So definitely a line I would jump on and maintain your plus money on it, because the way they're projecting the line, it could be flipped by the time this comes out. So thanks, guys, for listening. This is an early take on UFC Pena versus Nunes 2. As I said, there's a lot of trap spots on this. This isn't the greatest card for betting, to be honest. There's a lot of spots that are kind of 50-50. I suggest targeting over under props. That's probably the best way to go about this one, just because, as I said, the money lines aren't really there. It's a lot of low level heavyweights, low level women's MMA, and flyweight fights. So kind of three things I don't personally like to touch, just in retrospect to the fact that there's high variables. Things can go either way. Most of these fights will either go to decision if we're talking about women's MMA or we're talking about flyweights. And we all know that judging has been a little fucky recently. So you could have your ticket stolen from you. And in retrospect, on the other end, if you're talking about low-level heavyweights, you're talking about guys with very little experience that just are dumb heavy. So whenever they start winging hooks, it doesn't really matter who's favored. It's whoever lands first. So it doesn't take a lot of technique whenever you're 265 throwing a left hook at somebody's jaw. So just keep these things in mind. That's it. Thanks for listening. Don't Tap Podcast. We will have something else out later this week. Cheers.